So as you move into your groups, remember when you first get in there, if you could tell everyone what subject you teach, where you teach, or if you're going to be a student teacher, you might just say like the area of the state that you're going to be teaching in, and tell everyone else how to pronounce your first name. I will see you back here in 6 minutes. For those of you who are watching via video, what I want you to be writing about over the next 6 minutes, go into some detail. The question is this: how might your teaching be different if you think of yourself as a designer of learning experiences versus a teacher? And how are you thinking more deeply about the difference now that you've learned more about design? This is a question we talked about last week, but I feel like this week you probably are in a better like headspace to really understand what the difference might be. So take a few minutes, write about it. Welcome back. So, anyone have something that they would be willing to share?
Mhm. I mean, I
Yeah, I
can.
can.
Yeah.
Go.
So me?
Go for it.
Okay, so I think in our group, I mean, we had interesting things. We have Van who said he used like color theory and using light in the classroom and things like that. I mean, to create a mood. Um, we also thought that, I mean, considering ourselves as designer, I mean, it's like sorry, prioritizing students, and it's also allowing a lot of more, a lot of freedom. I mean, about the all the thoughts that we can have, and I think uh, I think it's forget the name of my group, of the participant in my group, but yeah, someone says that it's like considering the classroom as a stage where you want to construct an experience, and of course the idea of I mean, making plans, lesson plans that suit individuals, and not a whole group or anyone specifically.
Something that sounds like you all are starting to think about is how, if you're creating experiences, experiences are physical, right? Like they're in a space and things happen. There could be color and light. There could be um, things happening. Whereas I think in the past we've often thought about design as only in courses as only being about like what's happening in the brain. But it's so much more, right? Than just what a friend of mine she said likes to say, we're not teaching brains on sticks. We're teaching like whole people in a physical environment. And so if you're creating experiences, you have to think about the that kind of physical aspect of it. Okay, so I think there are a couple other people who had something they wanted to share.
Yeah, I said last time we had this that one took their job a lot more serious.
Hmm.
And kind of going deeper into it is like it takes a lot more time to do to be a designer rather than just teach because it's based off of individuals, and making it a lot more personal. But the one thing that Allison said was that it's a lot more fun. That you get to have a lot more fun designing these things and putting more time into it, and that it kind of breaks the boundaries of standards. You're not just teaching the standards; you're kind of going outside of those. So like that.
One of my students who graduated, I guess, last year, um, he is like kind of an expert on escape rooms. And that's one of the things I think about when I think about having an experience. An escape room is a type of experience, and so he's done some lessons that were designed around the escape plan or the escape room concept. There are very simple ways to do that, but he didn't do it the simple way. He went like full on, yeah. So I think that's one fun way to think about how it could look. Who else has a thought?
So our group really followed along with what everybody else has said. We've pretty much said that we're teachers. They're not willing to change. They want to stick to that status quo. They want to just stick to, hey, get them in, get them out type deal. But designers cater to each client. So us as designers, it's honestly to where we're able to give the students the best instruction.
Absolutely.
We are able to empathize with them, see what they're going, attach our lesson to, hey, let's see how we can best get them through also what they're going through, but also through the class as well.
So let's build on that idea. A number of you mentioned the word empathy, and I think this is this is a much bigger thing than you all probably know. But if, like me, you had been doing this for like 30 years, here's something you would know, and that is that for decades, um, we have taught across the United States a way of designing lessons and units that is called backward design. You will trust me, you will hear this backward design, backward design. You'll hear about backward design. The people who came up with the idea, Wiggins and McTighe, you will hear about it. And I'm going to teach it to you because it does work well. But the problem I found, and a number of other people have found with backward design, is that it should probably not be your starting point. Um, and instead, this design theory offers a better starting point because with backward design, you start with the standards you're trying to teach. And in design theory, you start with the people you're trying to teach. And that's a really big difference. Um, and so the question that I want to have you go back in and discuss is this one. Um, what is the difference, do you think, between starting with students instead of starting with the standards? So I'm going to put that in the chat. What is the difference between starting with students instead of starting with the standards? And you may remember that there's a a piece in my TED Talk where I say that sentence and try to really emphasize it, that we're starting with students, not with the standards. So what does that really mean? How would a lesson look different if you're starting with the students rather than starting with the standards? So let's recreate the breakout room so you meet some more people. Probably at this point, you're starting to have been in groups with multiple people multiple times. That's kind of fun. And I'll share that question. And let's do another 6 minutes, talk a little bit about this. Those of you who are watching this as a video, you've got your marching orders right about that same question.
She did it again.
Beneficent about what?
It is cruel.
Yeah, it is.
Zoom is a cruel mistress. I think we all know that. Just whisking you away. I've got this strange light coming in on me. There we go. Ooh, got a little dark there. So, what were some interesting things that came up?
I can start. Um, One of the things, it was kind of funny. Kyle was telling us about how one of the guys he'll teach with will just kind of hand out packets to his students. And it made me think of that video of the guy who's like, you can't just teach through a freaking packet, yo. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyways, starting with students, kind of just said like, obviously it's going to be more personable. Not every class you have is going to be the exact same, either through the day and through the years once you get more experience. And then also not each student's going to be the same. So when you start off with the students, you can kind of understand that someone said they're different learning styles of your students and just trying to create a course that's more directed towards them instead of focusing on the standards, which can kind of, I thought of as like boxing you in and focuses too heavy on scores and just kind of checking off requirements.
So often we're required to put on the board the standards that they're learning that day, which isn't horrible. But if you the idea is you would write them word for word, and written word for word, they seem horrifying. Like who reads those and are like, yay! I mean, it's never. Whereas, if instead you took that same concept and reworded it in a way that students could better understand what it was asking for, if maybe you worded it more as a question instead of a statement, I think that makes a big difference. And some schools will instead have you list things like by the end of this class period, you'll be able to. That seems a lot more inviting, kind of maybe a little bit more exciting, depending on what follows that statement. So yeah. So in this next round, we're going to do something that's a little different, and that is when I open up the breakout rooms, instead of being randomly placed in a room, you're going to go to a room with other people who teach what you do. Or sometimes I've put like two subjects in one room, but more or less you've got, at most two subjects that you're dealing with. And I want you to talk about this when you get into the breakout rooms. If you were doing a summer camp for the age of student that you teach and the subject that you teach, what would the summer camp be like? So let's put that in the chat. Think about it, get some ideas down. I'm going to put it in the chat. If you were teaching a summer camp for the age of students you teach and the same subject, what would it be like? Last summer, I was asked to speak at this summer camp that was a science summer camp for high school students that was being hosted at Georgia College. and it was one of the highlights of my summer. Um, Damn, if it weren't just a room full of nerds that were just incredible. And they wanted me to talk about AI. And so I talked about AI. And then afterwards, they had like a little, I'm going to call it a cocktail party, although obviously we weren't giving them alcoholic beverages, but the same concept. And it was so much fun because they all kind of gathered around and we ended up having these big, deep conversations about AI. And oh, man, it was such a good time. Also, they were learning astronomy and doing math that I did not understand. So, if you are teaching, here's put it in the chat. If you were teaching a summer camp for the age of students you teach and the same subject, what would it be like? All right. So when I open the breakout rooms, look for one that is the subject that you teach. I know some of you teach more than one subject, so feel free to choose the one that maybe appeals to you more. I'm letting you figure it out. Is it showing you the titles of the rooms?
No.
Huh.
Yeah, click on the breakout room like square.
Then you see them?
Yeah.
Ooh, strange happen. Click on the breakout room square.
I don't see a square.
Anyone who's left in a moment, I'll move you into the room you need.
I found it. If you guys are using the web version, just click on the more icon.
The more?
Yes, the little three dots.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I don't think I put in a ELA room. ELA,
Yeah,
No, ma'am.
ELA, stay here for a minute. Can I add a room? Ooh, Jake's not here. So poor Antoine doesn't have anyone to be with. Okay, let's hang on. Let's move Antoine. To history. And ELA, just stay right here. And the good news, my background is ELA. I teach the ELA course, which Rona has taken, if I recall correctly.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you were teaching an English camp, and it might be more specific than that, like it might be a writing camp. So let's say that if you were doing a writing camp, what would it be like? And those exist. There are lots of writing camps.
So thinking back a million years ago when I was in high school, I went to Governor's Honors Program for Palm Arts, and one of the most fun like classes I took in that major was we made a zine. And like each day, we would have a different topic that we would focus on, and it made it a lot of fun. But another one that was more memorable, it doesn't focus on writing, but we focused on villains and the development of characters in writing. And we read, good grief, what did we read? We read Heart of Darkness. And we watched, oh wait, I'm mixing that up with a different class, but we watched The Godfather, the original Godfather. We watched another movie and really dove into the creation of that character arc and how we could apply it to our writing. I think that would be so much fun. And it was interesting. So much of what our kids do involves screens, and we're moving into multimodal technologies and testing. So I think that would be interesting, and it would push them to think a little bit deeper into why is that character doing that? Why is that setting that way? What does that mean? Instead of just the basic story elements
Yeah.
that go into it, you know, pushing it to that second level. So that would be really fun.
I
I
once
would love to
took a
take that
class
again.
that was called Literary Monsters. So we read like Frankenstein, Dracula, those kinds of books. It was incredible.
Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray was the book we read in that class. The
Yeah.
Portrait of Dorian Gray.
A friend of
Okay.
mine read that book and was so like freaked out.
It was so much fun.
I'll go next. I think that I would like it to be something that what was actually really creative. Like if you were talking about character arcs and characterization, I think it would be fun if maybe they wrote something from the character's perspective, wrote a monologue, and then acted it out. I think that would be nice too because it's immersive. It would be an experience for them. So if I had a summer camp, I probably want to be something like that, something really
Yes.
creative where they really got to become the person to learn more about characterization.
It would be one of my favorite activities that we do in my class, with my honors class, is we'll read. Like, for example, we read Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes. And instead of it being from the main character, what's his name? Oh my goodness. Anyways, instead of it being from the young man's point of view, I had the kids rewrite the story from Mrs. Jones' point of view. And they like it was so much fun to hear all of these different variations of the same story, just with a different point of view. It really gets them into it. It's really cool. So that would be so much fun to just to do in class, what you're saying. Like that's really cool.
I'll have to add
The word you use this word immersive. If it was immersive, I think that's a word we need to think more about.
Immersive.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that captures, we were talking about this idea of creating experiences. What makes an experience? To me, what makes an experience is how immersive it is. I had never thought of using that word, but if you ask students at the end of each class period, like, how immersed did you feel? How immersive was this? And see what they had to say, that'd be fascinating.
Yeah. I like to do things like that because with it being immersive, it helps them to really go deeper, far beyond like the standard or what they need to learn, the learning target for that day. And it brings it full circle to them. It actually makes it make sense in their head because they're not thinking about, oh, I have to learn how to analyze this text for characterization, mood, theme, and tone. They actually got to do it. And you can ask, what mood were you feeling? What was the author's tone? So with it being immersive, they actually get to practice it.
Yeah.
Get to do it. And that's something that I say all the time. I'm like, whatever the standard is, let's actually have them do something, like have them do it, not just sit and kind of be lectured to.
Yeah. It's going to go in one ear and out the other if we just have them check in those boxes,
Absolutely.
There's a book that I use in the English pedagogy class. It's called Communicative Literacies. And it's called Action Strategies for Increasing Understanding. And it's all about having students basically doing a ton of like kind of acting, role play, imagine you are this character and you're that character, and now this other thing happens that didn't happen in the book, but you've got to think about how the character would react if that did happen. Just all kinds of strategies that look like that. That's immersive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was thinking about, most characterization, having the students act out the characters. I remember Dr. Aubrey from your last class. I can't remember the name, what it was called, but when the students would act out the character and role play. So that's what I think I would use in summer camp.
And you could do a whole summer camp just around those strategies. And students would be like, this is amazing.
Oh, that's a good book.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the name of it again?
It's called Action Strategies is the main title.
Oh,
It's by Wilhelm, Wilhelm. And I really like the first edition better than the second edition. You know, sometimes the second edition doesn't really add that much. And if you get the first edition, they're really inexpensive. It's easy to find used ones. So I would say go ahead and get it now because you're going to need it for that class later anyway. And you could be, you know, like already enjoying it.
okay. Thank you.
I wish now that Ashley mentioned GT or not GTF, Governor.
GHP,
What's it again?
GHP, Governor's Honors Program.
Governor's Honors Program. Yes. Let me write it down. I did some work with one of the Governor's Honors Programs once, and yeah.
It would be so much like that'd be so much fun to do. It was terrible for my attitude because I did it during between junior and senior year. So when I got back to school and it was regular school and I was a senior and I was already kind of checked out, I was like, you guys are all losers. It when in fact, like I'm just the big nerd who just was a jerk. You know, it added in that element to the teen angst that it didn't already need. But that was literally, it was so much fun. I got to meet so many people. And in fact, um, one class, so I was a comm arts major and I did a French minor, which made me think of Antony. It was all about French cinema. So we weren't necessarily learning the language as much as we were learning about the culture through their cinema, which is really fun.
Yeah.
But I would love to go and teach, you know, during a summer for Governor's Honors.
So in the Governor's Honors Program, is it always in the same physical place?
So when I went, it was in Valdosta State. But before that, it was I think it was at Berry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Move it
think
around.
they've moved it back to Berry, but I couldn't tell you where it is now. But it was so much fun. And Valdosta is just 45 minutes away from where I live. So it was like I was away from home, but my parents could still take me to lunch on Sundays if I was homesick. You know, it was fun.
So, a number of you probably know about the Governor's Honors Program. We were talking about it in the ELA group. And that might be a really good thing to visit because everyone I've ever known who has taught in the Governor's Honors Program or been a student in the Governor's Honors Program have said it was like one of the great experiences of their life. And all of those are about the subject. You know, like there's a Governor's Honors Program for each of the subjects. What is it they're doing that is so life-changing and magical? And you know, whatever it is, it could be done in your classroom just as easily. I thought I would tell you about a couple just really interesting things I've seen people do in their classrooms. Adrienne used the word immersive, and once she said it, I was like, yes, okay, I think that's a word we really need to think of. And then when she said it, my mind immediately jumped to a couple of things that I had seen when I've been out observing student teachers. And one was I went to this art teacher's classroom, and the student teacher was teaching about cave painting. And so when the students came in the room, it was lit only by candles, but it was the kind of candle that is electric, you know, not, she wasn't lighting anyone on fire. And so it was this kind of dim, beautiful, flickery light. And there were no chairs. And the floor had big, long pieces of, you know, what's called like butcher paper. It's what you would cover bulletin boards with, but it was brown, like the cover, like a cave wall would be. And she had a video queued up that was showing some of the more famous like cave paintings. It was a still. So when they came in, they saw on the screen these cave paintings, and they all had a little, were told to sit by a candle. So she had the candle sitting in a way so that when students sat by them, they'd be kind of evenly spread out. And so as soon as the students come in, they're immersed, and it's different and it's novel and what's going to happen. And so she showed a very short video that talked about cave painting and what the history of that and how it was done and so forth. And then she passed out like a chalk-like material that they were going to use to create their own kind of cave paintings on these giant pieces of paper. And she talked a lot about the symbolism and like what would a bison look like in a cave painting and so forth. At any rate, it was spectacular. And I just know that the students probably, years from now will still remember that experience because it was so immersive. Another one that came to my mind is an English teacher. And she had the students read some horror stories, but like the more literary kind, like Cast of Amontillado, that kind of thing. And they had been talking about like how to create that sensation of how to make something scary and build suspense and so forth. And the students had written their own horror stories, like kind of campfire style horror stories. And after they finished, the next day when they came in, the room was dark. And as they came in, she handed them flashlights, and they all got under like this big sort of tent she had made out of, like sheets, bed sheets. And they did that thing where you hold the uh, flashlight under your face, and then each person got to read their story while holding someone held the flashlight. And again, it was so immersive, so memorable. Yeah. So, what were some ideas that you all came up with?
I'll speak for the math and science group. Um, Allison came up with the idea of doing like a forensic camp, where the kids will be able to do an investigation on a scenario where one of them will be a criminal or something, and they'll be able to take footprints, fingerprinting, blood spatters, and figure out who was the criminal. That was one idea. And then for math, I came up with the idea of taking our kids on field trips to jobs. And they helped me elaborate and allowing them to shadow people who do jobs that relate to math, basically. So yeah, that's what we did. What came up with.
Sounds very cool. How about history folks? What were you all thinking?
Yeah, I can talk. I mean, for history, it's a little bit difficult, is what we were kind of coming to the conclusion about. But if we did have a camp, we'd probably make it on the weekend or like a 2 day camp. If it was a 5 day camp, we'd probably do themes for different days. For maybe the younger kids, like putting like involving like food with history. Um, and um, oh yeah, and then for the older kids, maybe do some sort of like role play or simulation. Have some sort of debate. Just get these kids that are interested in history talking to each other and hearing different perspectives on what they think actually happened. So yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking about.
I have a friend. She used to teach in the MAT. She's retired now. Betta Weiss, and she taught her history classes almost entirely through simulations. So every single class period, it would be the majority of the class period would be a simulation. And I would argue that history is maybe the easiest to teach in a like in an immersive, experiential way, for sure. And in fact, history folks, write this down. Maybe everyone should write this down. Um, there's this whole program that's called Reacting to the Past. Reacting to the Past. And it's mostly used in colleges, but it's like long-term role play. So it might last 2 or 3 class periods, maybe even sometimes an entire semester. And they have a lot of them are history focused. Um, but like the one that I played was about Darwin. It was a science one. And so we different people played all these different roles, and um, it's a little hard to explain. You almost just have to look it up and go see examples of what this looks like. But when I most of you know I have a dual appointment. I teach at both University of Georgia and Georgia College. And when I'm teaching at University of Georgia, the woman that I'm teaching with, that's her area of expertise. She's one of the national experts on reacting to the past. And it's just incredible how it seems like distant and crazy in a way to imagine whole units that are built around a role play, and yet there are loads of people all over the United States already doing it, and who have already written up like everything you would need to do these in your own class. They have them for just about any subject. I'm going to write that down to make sure that I give you a link. Reacting to the past. Other ideas that came up in your discussions. How about art?
And business.
Yes, and business. Ooh, tell us about business, Colton.
So one of the things that I said was summer camp, create a business. Gather you a team, create a business from scratch. Something that you could possibly actually, after high school, after college, kind of implement and start up. Another one would be Shark Tank. So whatever you saw on campus or whatever you saw at the camp, like everybody brings a ton of junk, throw it in a huge pile. Everybody goes and picks like 10, 15 things. Hey, Shark Tank, here we go. See if you can sell us a product. Another one was mock interviews. Bring in actual business HR people just to get these guys in that setting. And then some of them have seniors interview freshmen.
Yeah.
And just the questions that you could get from seniors to freshmen would be crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's some of mine that I had for business. The art stuff was more fun. So
I don't know. When I was some of you, I mean, I've already told the story too, but when I was in Finland, the group of us who was there, like our home base, just to have a place to meet, was in a college of business at a university in Finland. And so we were surrounded by all these business majors. And so like on breaks and stuff, we'd just wander around, be chatting with them, and learning more about what they were doing. And in Finland, if you're a business major of any kind, in your junior year of college, you're put on a team. And the team is 10 people, and the team has, people in marketing, finance, accounting, all the stuff. And that group of 10 spends the next 2 years building and running actual businesses. They start with one, and then they often, add on others. They get to keep the money they make. Some of them make tens of thousands of dollars in their junior and senior year of college. They have to pay rent to the college. That's part of, making it real, is that they have expenses like that. And like loads of people graduate, like they've already built an accounting firm that they just keep running after they graduate. Or like, I don't know if you've ever seen There are these boxes, and you like water the box and put it in a dark space, and it sprouts mushrooms. That was invented by one of the teams a number of years ago, and they made it like a fortune with these suckers and sold the idea to some, to other businesses that now um, continue to do that. So, I mean, it was, you know, how did they teach them about business? By having them actually do it. And then, once a week, they the team of that team of 10 would get together with all the professors and, just talk through, what's going well, what's not, how can we help? Um, that's immersive. Yeah. Art people. I heard from Colton you had some fun ideas. What were they?
So we were just talking about how taking experiences out of the classroom makes a huge difference. And I was giving them an example of an experience that I had when I was in college. Was we were doing a rebranding for Stone Mountain. So we went to actual Stone Mountain, climbed up the hill, and just sort of explored the space and consider what new designs needs to be done, what signage needs to be updated, or if it's outdated. We interviewed random people, talk about their views on Stone Mountain. But stuff like that was very it really put us out there,
Yes.
exposed us to the real world. And it was an experience that that I remember. It was memorable.
Yeah. Very cool. Tony, I forgot that our Spanish person is in Indonesia, but he will be back soon. And but what
Yeah,
what ideas did you come up with?
yeah, I'm in touch with him. So I was in the history group. No, for the history, I was explaining that one day. I mean, here in the south of France, I visited a castle. I mean, it's not even I mean, it's like more a hamlet with a castle. I mean, and they were doing. I mean, Wednesday is off for kids in France, so on Wednesday they were doing some fun activities. So, and they had a man dressed as a knight and making a course of geometry and even sacred geometry. So it was really interesting, and he was using compass. I mean, a lot of geometry tools, and so I think it was very, very interesting. And in the meantime, outside, they had like built old like wooden weapons from medieval age, and they were also explaining engineering regarding all of this. So I think for the summer camp or for something like that, could be very, very fun. I mean, to create this a lot. I mean, a lot of different. I mean, the problem is, and we talk about that in our group. The problem is to create a lot of activities, because it's like half an hour, 20 minutes max.
Yeah.
So you have to create a rotation. And I had in my mind also for language, and because I'm a French teacher, so to yeah, do the same around cooking, or because I think it's very, very interesting to learn the vocabulary and a lot of things about a lot of stuff about culture by yeah, putting your hands in it. So,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Be funny to have everybody, they like everyone wouldn't be able to see what anyone else was doing, and you would lead them through a recipe in French, and they would have to try to follow it, and then they would see, whose came out edible and who
yeah,
got
exactly. Yeah.
when you could put in some ingredients that aren't even supposed to be there, but they'd just be there to, to maybe fool people. Damn, that'd
Yeah.
be fun.
We actually mentioned a cooking camp in the math and science because you could incorporate chemistry, you could incorporate math. I think a cooking camp would be really exciting. I didn't mention this when we were talking about our group, but I did have the opportunity to take kids to the Galapagos Islands one summer, and that was, I mean, it was a bucket list for myself, but it was incredible. And it was totally about education and the science behind it. So,
And of course, something to think about is, can you do that all the time? You can't. But what would it look
right.
like to turn your classroom into the Galapagos Islands, through visuals that are being projected and sound and oh, that reminds me, another student of mine, um, he put together this whole thing to help students better understand what it would have sounded like and felt like and smelled like to be in a Civil War battle. Um, and it was ultra immersive and incredible. Um, yeah. So think about this for a minute. Um, in At the time that I went to Finland, I'm pretty sure it was 2018, or 2019. And at that time, what they were experimenting with was 1/4 of the time in Finnish schools, they had interdisciplinary teaching. So it wasn't like math, French, history. It was very much mingled. And they liked it so much that I think it was 2 years ago, the entire country went to 100% interdisciplinary all the time. They don't have separate subjects anymore. Everything they teach is interdisciplinary because it turns out the world is interdisciplinary. Almost no one does anything that's just that very slim, something. So, what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to move you into breakout rooms where you're paired with someone who teaches a different subject than you do. And the two of you are going to imagine, what if you created a class that the two of you co-taught? And it had to be kind of equal parts of both of the two things. What would it be like? So start trying to kind of jot some ideas down, be thinking a little bit about this because it's going to take me a minute to put the breakout rooms together. So hang tight. All right, a few rooms I decided to put 3 people just to see what would happen. So when you get in your room, remember this is your goal. You're going to imagine that the two of you are teaching a class together. You can decide up front whether you want it to be like middle grades or high school. You might want to do like 8th or 9th grade, just in case if one of you is high school focused and one is middle, get you somewhere, pretty close to the middle. And you're going to try to imagine what it would look like to have this incredible immersive experience that would involve equally both of your subjects. Are you ready? And ignore the title of your room because it doesn't mean anything at this point. All right, and you're going to be in some in groups of 2 and sometimes in groups of 3. And you're going to be in there for 8 minutes. 8 minutes. All right, so those of you who are watching the video, let me think for a minute. Imagine, I don't think any of you are art. So imagine that the person you're co-teaching with is an art teacher. And start writing, what would that look like? What would a course that was half what you teach and half art look like? And you want to make it as exciting, as immersive, as amazing as possible. Write for 6 minutes. All right. So I want you to write something in the chat, and this is going to be very hard, and it's okay if you mess this part up. I want you to write something in the chat, but don't hit enter or return. So you will eventually hit it, but wait until I tell you to, if you can. It's pretty hard. Because people just naturally like finish writing and then they're like, return. Okay. What I want you to write is, what is the most interesting idea you've had so far tonight? It might not even be one that you feel like you could definitely do, but it's interesting. What is the most interesting idea you've had for your own classroom this evening? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes because it takes a little while to think and type. So at 7:21, I'm going to have you hit return. Go. 30 more seconds. All right. Hit enter, and it's all going to chat waterfall. And then start scrolling around and seeing what everyone had to say. Man, these are fantastic. One of the things this reminded me of, this is when I'm at University of Georgia, I'm working with there's a group of faculty that get invited into the program. There's usually 14 of them, and they're from all over the state, and they're all different disciplines. Some are from like community colleges, Georgia Tech. I mean, it's just everything. And I do the same exercise with them where I put them in pairs and they have to imagine co-teaching a class. And one time there was an accountant and a historian together. And the historian taught a lot about like major disasters, like big airplane crashes and natural disasters, and like the Great Chicago Fire, things like that. And so after talking about it, the accountant actually went and made the class. He didn't co-teach it with her. He was at a different university. She created a class called Accounting for Disaster. And the whole class was about accounting. They were using all the accounting skills, but they were doing it around a famous plane crash disaster. Because when there's a big disaster, there's a lot more accounting involved than you would guess, a whole lot. And so yeah, I just thought that was just one of the most brilliant ones because when you think of something that's, I'm sure it's not boring. One of my sisters is an accountant and she's a very interesting person and she loves accounting. But from the outside looking in, frankly, it sounds boring. And the idea of a class that's accounting for disaster, I mean, that sounds incredible. So yeah, very interesting. So I want to switch gears for a little bit. We're still thinking about design. But one of the ideas behind design theory is that you are likely trying to solve a particular problem with your design. Now, let's say you're trying to design a better toothbrush. The number of problems you're trying to deal with is limited. You know, when you're trying to design a course, it's huge. There's so many possible issues you could be trying to solve. So I'm going to put up a whiteboard. And I think what should work is that you click on this T and then click somewhere on the screen. And then you can write a major problem that you see in education that a course could solve. So maybe one of the biggest ones, I'm going to type this one is students aren't very engaged. This is a huge problem. You see it everywhere. So that might be a problem your class would seek to solve. So just start trying to have at it. You might have to kind of pull your words around so you're not typing on top of other people. But start thinking of problems that that need to be solved in education that a course could solve. And again, you just click the little T and then click somewhere on the screen and then start typing. Take about 20 more seconds. And then just kind of pull back and look at what everyone's written. And I want you to start thinking, you may be like, all of these. Well, you can't design a course that's going to solve all of these. It would be overwhelming for you as the designer. So if you only had to pick, if you had to pick one or two things that you're really going to focus on, um, that your course design will try to fix or improve, which one or two would it be? And sometimes, like some of these, I think you can see kind of could be merged, probably kind of fit together. And once you've picked one or two of these, and you might think of another one later, and if you change your mind later, that is no problem. I'm just trying to get the ball rolling on this at the moment, but I want you to hit it at some point fairly soon in the semester, like within the next few days, hopefully, kind of trying to settle on one or two so that as you're designing in the back of your head, you're also thinking, like, I want to make sure students are more engaged, or um, maybe you're in a situation where students could use AI unwisely. I hadn't thought to put that one up there, but for a few people, that might be something that is really important, that of course your course is designed to make sure that students won't use AI in ways that they probably shouldn't. That could be an interesting one. So that's what I'm going to leave you with as we head out is I want you to think about over the next few days what one, hopefully just one, or at most two things do you want your course design to accomplish beyond just teaching math or science or art? All right, I'm closing the board. I guess I should, I'm going to take a screenshot. And hopefully I will remember to put that in one of the modules so that you can see the screenshot. If I forget after, if you look at the next module or two and you're like, hey, I don't see it, remind me. All right, so final thoughts. I want to stick around for a few more minutes. So what are some thoughts you're having at this point, especially if you haven't had much of a chance to talk tonight to the whole group? What are you thinking about?
I didn't necessarily think it was a possibility that you could co-teach with another subject and make it fun and efficient. So that was pretty cool and pretty eye-opening, and something that I would love to try.
And even if you can't co-teach, which sometimes is difficult to do, you can often co-plan. So you and the other teacher are teaching separate courses, but you're getting together to plan how you'll mingle the two topics. I knew a pair of people once in the high school who they like to imagine they're teaching, just picture them, the two classes being across the hall from each other. They weren't, but and every other week during third period, the teachers would swap. So they'd be here, and then the week after that, here, and the week after that, here. And they taught two different things and mingled the two. So that would like be another possible option. Once you start thinking more about this, the more it starts to seem like it's possible. There was there's this middle school in, I want to say Ohio. I could be wrong about that. Somewhere in the Midwest. And we had some people from the school come talk at Georgia College once. It was incredible. And they, at this particular middle school, what they do is the first week of classes, each group, like each class, each kind of cohort of students gets together and they spend the entire week working with their teachers to determine what are the things they want to study for the next month. And well, for the next 3 months. And they pick a number of themes that would allow them to learn, incorporate all the different subjects. A big theme will likely do that. And then they work an entire week trying to figure out a theme that meets all their needs, is interesting to everybody, and so forth. And then they go forth and together, the students and the teachers create that curriculum. And they have it over, like they have one theme for a month and another theme for the second month and another theme for the third month. I guess there's probably 4 months, so yeah.
I did
They
a
did it.
short lesson. Yeah, I did a short lesson one time where it was biology, ninth grade biology, and the ninth grade English teacher. So I was teaching on cloning cells and stuff, and they were learning about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And we were able to kind of incorporate that together. And then my kids ended up writing a research paper later on in the year about, so we kind of collaborated on that aspect. But then later in the year, they did a research paper on evolution versus creation. And so they got to do a research APA style. And so it was graded from a scientific standpoint and research based from my perspective, and then from an English perspective on hers. So we were able to integrate those two together.
Very cool. I'll tell you, Allison has just taken a job at Georgia Military College Prep School. And something that they've done for a long time there is every year that American English teacher, whoever's doing it, they've done this for many years, and a history teacher, they get together and the students do this museum that's about like the time that The Great Gatsby is set in. And so it was that Roaring Twenties. I'm gonna say, I could be wrong about that, but just go with me. Let's just assume that's what it is. I think it is. And so like they'll have different exhibits in the museum that have to do with different things related to the 20s, and it's become like a big deal that they do every year, and it's detailed. I mean, it's a pretty legit museum by the time that they've got it all set up. I have often gone to just see what's happening, and it's amazing. And that's because of interdisciplinary history and English. It's pretty cool. All right, y'all. Head out unless you have a question that you want to ask me right now, in which case I'm gonna stick around for a minute just in case anyone has something they want to ask. But otherwise, I will see you, some of you tomorrow for one-on-one meetings, some of you next week, but I will see you later.
I have a question.
Yay!
About the survey and pre-assessment module. I didn't see any information about that in Georgia View. I saw it in like a personal page in like I guess where all like the challenges are, but I didn't know like when it was particularly due because it wasn't part of the Georgia View like checklist that we have each week. So
It
I
will
was
be
just
eventually.
curious.
Eventually you'll do a module and it will be in there. Yes. I
Okay,
don't
I
know
was just
why I
making
put it
sure.
at the top of the list, because it doesn't actually happen first.
Okay, thank you. Because I was like, should I email her, like, ask for like an extension possibly? Because I was like, I don't know if this is due. Like, it was due like last week on the personal page, but I was like, I don't know like when it's due or
I don't
not.
know. I don't know why I put that date there. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. But no worries. Always remember, if it's not in Georgia View, it's not real.
Okay. Alrighty.
See you later.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.